What is up, YouTube? That's here, and today I'm bringing you guys something extra special. Today I'm going to show you guys my team building process for how I theory craft teams for a tournament. I will say I'm going to link something in the description. It's a link to my Patreon. It's a link to a free article that shows how you can build a team for a tournament over the course of like 2 or 3 months to do it the perfect way. But if you're playing for a tournament that's in like a week and you have like very little time to build, this is a really good guide for showing you guys how to team build for a tournament. So the tournament that I have coming up is the BDSP OU Winter Seasonal Tournament. It's a 6v6 singles OU Smogon tournament, and we're going to be building a team for that based off the Pokemon that I like, and this is for round 1. I will say that you can totally change your team every single round. You have a week to play each round. So I'm going to be building a team that can generally handle most options. If anything, I'm going to be playing a little bit more defensive in round 1 and taking a little bit more risks each round as I play better players. So I'm going to be showing you guys how to build a really super safe team for this tournament. So if you guys are excited for that, you guys want to see my tournament games, think about answering the question of the day, and think about just sticking around and watching this. So again, I'm the type of player that really likes to build around the Pokemon that I like. And so the Pokemon that I think are strong, the Pokemon that I think that I like, that's just generally how I do like to play. So we're going to go right into our team builder. We are on Pokemon Showdown. That's the website we're using. We're building for BDSP OU, which is a level 166 singles format today. And that's going to be Garchomp for the start. I love Garchomp, man. Garchomp's the coolest Pokemon in the world. It used to be an Uber at the very end of Gen 4, and I think every single team should just totally have this thing. If you take a look at its base stats here, this thing's base stats are absolutely massive. It has a 102 base speed, which is faster than base 100s. It is a massive 108 base HP, which is huge. 130 base attack, which with good defense, good specialty, good special attack, this Pokemon can do pretty much anything, and I really think most teams should have a Garchomp. And I will say, I'm going to give a little spoiler here, I already have my team relatively planned out, but what I don't have planned out is my moves, my EVs, and how I'm planning on playing it when I actually get into my game. So we're going to talk about all 6 of the Pokemon and how I plan on playing them, and then from there we'll build our EVs and stuff like that. I generally think it's a really good idea to pick your 6 Pokemon first, and then from there pick all your moves, and then from there pick your abilities and your items. You don't really want to pigeonhole yourself into like picking a Garchomp and saying, 100% you're going to use a Choice Scarf, right? Because then if you do that and then add like 5 more Pokemon and you say you only want to use Choice Scarf Garchomp, what you're doing is you're pigeonholing yourself into only looking at the potential of what a Choice Scarf Garchomp brings. Whereas if you don't add your item, you can add anything a Garchomp can bring, which is actually a lot better. So it's a really good idea to add all 6 of your Pokemon first, and then think about items, then think about EVs, then think about abilities and things like that. So the second Pokemon that I plan on using here is going to be Blissey. I think Blissey is just a Pokemon that definitely fits my personal play style. I will say that I probably am going to be going with a Serene Grace build like I've been using on YouTube. And I really think Blissey brings a lot to the table in that it gets a ton of special attack coverage. There's a ton of Pokemon in the format that are 4 times weak to some very popular moves Blissey gets. So you can use Thunder to hit Gyarados, you can use Flamethrower to hit Scizor, you can use Ice Beam to hit Garchomp and Dragonite. And so Blissey brings a lot of coverage to the table, and I think that at least for the first few rounds, I probably will be using a Blissey. Maybe it might be telegraphed because I'm using it and I make a lot of videos that get a lot of views, but I still think that playing to my own personal play style is probably a good idea, at least for these first few rounds. So Blissey's definitely going to be on my team for the first few rounds. Now this next Pokemon, right? This next Pokemon is the numero uno Pokemon that I think is the most underrated special pick that this format has to offer. I think this Pokemon got the biggest buff going into BDSP, and I actually haven't been this excited to use a Pokemon in a very long time. I think the last time I actually got this excited to use an underrated pick was probably back in like 2015. That's like 7 years ago, and that's actually going to be Tentacruel. I think Tentacruel brings so much to the table. So if you take a look at Tentacruel here, Tentacruel has a really good base speed, which is 100. So it's going to be speed tying things like Staraptors, things like Zapdos, things like Salamence, but it also gets a really good base special attack. Water type Pokemon don't actually have a high base special attack most of the time. It has an absolutely massive special D, and what it gets is it gets Rapid Spin. So it's one of the best Rapid Spin Pokemon in the format, giving it also gets a +1 speed boost from Rapid Spin, which is absolutely amazing. But I think Tentacle is so good because it really covers up for all of the weaknesses Garchomp has. Like, Garchomp's weak against Dragon and Ice attacks and Fairy attacks, right? So Tentacle covers up for all of those while also just applying a ton of synergy, coverage, speed control. Like, Tentacle just is so good for this team. I'm so excited to use Tentacruel, and I want to like really feature Tentacruel and get some good games with it. So I'm really excited to use Tentacruel. As for the next Pokemon, I have a couple other Pokemon I really do plan on using. And again, I want to play a little bit more defensive for these first few rounds. So I really do think that like a Clefable would be a really good Pokemon to stop my opponents from sweeping because it gets access to the Unaware ability. It says this Pokemon ignores other Pokemon stat changes while doing damage. So they can get to the +6 from a Dragon Dance, +6 from a Swords Dance, +6 from a Nasty Plot. I don't really care. I'm still going to take damage exactly if they're at their neutral base stat. So Clefable is a really good Pokemon. It also plays in conjunction with this Blissey, being able to add a bunch of special coverage for attack types that I don't actually have coverage for. So I could put like Fire Blast on this Clefable to deal with like Scizors. I could put Ice Beam on it to deal with dragons and ground types. Things like that. I think Clefable is a very good defensive type. We're going to look a little bit more defensively. We're going to round ourselves out a little bit more defensively again. We need a standard rock setter, and so I think Skarmory. So Skarmory is going to be a great Pokemon to add here. One really cool thing Skarmory adds to the table is its Steel and Flying typing. So Steel typing is really good because it makes it so we don't take as much damage from Fairy attacks from the Garchomp. Right here. But also its Flying type makes it so we don't have to take the big, ground attack damage on our Tentacle slots. We can switch into our Skarmory, put up rocks, go for whirlwinds, things like that. It's going to be very solid. I think Skarmory's and Blissey is just a super solid combo, and I think it's going to be really good for me, at least in these first couple rounds. So as for the last Pokemon here, you see we have a bunch of special attackers. Blissey, Tentacle, Clefable, and then we have one big physical attacker in Garchomp with like a secondary physical attacker in Skarmory. I think we need another physical mon for this form, for like this last spot. Also a physical mon that covers things that Garchomp struggles with. So what does Garchomp really struggle with? Like, think about it. Garchomp's going to be using things like Dragon Claw, for example, and like Earthquake, for example. So when you're building your teams, like, think about what your strengths are. Like, I want to play to this Garchomp's strengths. It's using Earthquake and Dragon Claw predominantly. So what are things that resist this? Things like Fairies can nullify our Dragon Claw. Steels can nullify our Earthquake. Steels can't nullify our Earthquake, but Flyings can nullify our Earthquake. Steel types nullify our Dragon Claw. So I really do think that like an Infernape would be really good here as a really aggressive speed tiering, being able to outspeed base 100s. It can pin those steel types. It can switch in, potentially on fairy attacks, do neutral damage against fairies, and just be really good against the Pokemon that Garchomp does struggle with. So I think Infernape is going to be really good. It also helps us being a secondary physical type attacker to be able to pair with our Garchomp. And again, another reason why we really want to use Infernape, I guess I'm getting way too ahead of myself when talking about this team building. I will say this team has been theory crafted over the past 2 months of me analyzing the meta. That's me watching games, understanding the meta, watching other YouTubers like Pokegame, MV, and other people play the meta to understand what's popular. I think there's probably a handful of really popular teams right now. I think the most popular team on meta is probably going to be Dragmag, which is 2 dragon types being either Latios Garchomp or Latios Dragonite and a Magnezone. Magnezone comes in, uses its magnet pull to trap the steel type Pokemon like Skarmory or like other Magnezones or Empoleon. Remember, steel type Pokemon resist dragon attacks. So if you take out their steel type, it allows for things like Latios, Dragonite, and Garchomp to sweep the game. So Dragmag is super popular. Another really popular team core is going to be like dragon types with Latios again. And things like Weavile. Weavile is super popular right now, probably a top 10 OU pick. And so this team, if you actually can tell, is really good against Weavile. Skarmory is great versus Weavile. Infernape's great versus Weavile. Infernape's actually amazing versus Weavile. It resists both its stab attacks being dark and ice. Tentacle's also super good versus Weavile. Blissey and Clefable are also okay versus Weavile, but Weavile's super meta right now. Weavile with Latios is really popular, so this team takes that out. And then like the last popular core, I would just say is Good Stuffs with things like multiple special attackers like Manaphy, Latios, and then you also have like additions of like Gliscor, Scizor. One thing that a lot of those Pokemon have in common is like Scizor's ability to Swords Dance, Clefable's ability to Calm Mind, and a lot of like potential setup ability. Also, another really popular Pokemon is something like Azumarill. So you can kind of see our team deals with things like Scizor, Azumarill, Gliscor pretty well. Tentacruel is great for a lot of those. Tentacruel just absolutely destroys things like Scizor and Azumarill. It's water poison typing, whilst both of the type of moves that both those Pokemon use, so the water Fairy and Bug Steel, both get fully walled by Tentacruel. So I think this is a really, really cool team. I will say we have 2 weaknesses to electric types. If you actually take a chance to go over into our team builder here onto Maryland, you can see we have 2 times weakness to electric with 1 nullification on the Garchomp slot. We have 2 weaknesses to ground, that being Tentacruel and Infernape, but we have a nullification on the Skarmory slot. We have 2 weaknesses to Psychic as well on the Tentacruel and the Infernape slot, but we have, like, think about what type of attacks Psychic are. They're normally special attacks, so, like, Blissey and Clefable are going to be doing a great job at mitigating Psychic damage, as well as Skarmory using its Steel typing to mitigate Psychic damage. So I would say this is a super, super balanced team, and I think we're in a pretty good spot moving forward, looking forward towards adding our moves and seeing what we actually want to get done with the team. So let's go back into the team here. The next thing that I really recommend when you're building a team for a tournament is adding your moves before really adding a lot of your abilities and your items and your EVs, just because I generally think once you get to this point where you can pick your 6 Pokemon, you generally want to get your playstyle down, and then from there you add the items and moves to complement that playstyle. So again, I really think Garchomp's best built with like a sub Swords Dance set. Now this is my personal opinion. I think that like Scarf Chomp is great in specific teams. Life Orb Chomp is great in specific teams. There's so many different types of Garchomp sets that can be really, really good, but this is my personal favorite, and I think this blends really, really well with the team. I think the way this team's going to play is I'm going to use my different walls, being my Blissey, Tentacle, Clefable, Skarmory, and then eventually I'll be able to get a KO, or maybe they'll get a KO. I'll let them get a KO on something, and I can come with Garchomp when they have a weak turn, set up a Swords Dance, set up a substitute, and then sweep the game after their Latios is gone. This team is absolutely amazing at dealing with things like Latios, things like Weavile, things like Gliscor, things like Scizor. You know, a lot of those Pokemon that are really, really popular on most common teams. So it's a very, very safe team. So sub Swords Dance, Earthquake, Dragonclaw, Garchomp is going to be very, very good for this tournament. Remember, we do have to use Rough Skin, so I will click that right here because Sandvale is banned in the current OU format. As for the Blissey, we're going into moves next. I do think that Softball is definitely the move that you want on Blissey, being able to restore some health here. And then from there, I really do think you're going to want to add moves like Ice Beam, being able to 4x super effective things like Gliscor and Garchomp and Dragonite, and then also being able to use Thunder. And the reason we use Thunder over Thunderbolt, people have asked me this a ton, is because Thunder has a 30% chance to para, Thunderbolt has a 10%. Right? So our ability Serene Grace here doubles the secondary effects, right? So if we go back to this Thunder, we have a 60% chance to para if we hit with the 70% accuracy Thunder. It's super greedy, but this is the type of thing that like I personally like playing for. It's like a win-win Thunder Wave, right? So Thunder Wave has a 90% accuracy, and it's pretty good. But imagine if you did like half of your opponent's HP while you paralyze them. It's a win-win. It's a risk it for the biscuit play, but this is how I've always played Blissey, and I love it. And I really do also like the addition of Flamethrower, just because like Scizor is really, really popular. It's the most popular Pokemon. If you actually go back and take a look at the most used Pokemon for BDSP OU, Scizor is up there. There's a ton of Steel types up there. Flamethrower is very, very good on Blissey, and I would really, really recommend not cutting it because, you know, you're going to need something to one-shot that Scizor. And again, Blissey is great bait for Scizor. If you're playing Blissey and they don't know that you have Flamethrower, they would Swords Dance in your face 9 times out of 10. So this Flamethrower is going to be a very, very good play. As for Tentacruel, I think Tentacruel is a really, really unique Pokemon. It gets very, very good defensive typing. Water, Poison. That's absolutely amazing. It also is able to get speed boosts off of its Rapid Spin. So if you know they're going to switch in their Latios, if you know they're going to switch in their Gengar, you can just Rapid Spin. Maybe not Rapid Spin against the Gengar, but Rapid Spin against the Latios to get that +1 speed boost so you can outspeed said Pokemon. So I really think Tentacruel is actually best built in this format, a little bit more aggressive, and best built with some offensive options. So that's going to be things like Sludge Bomb, Sludge Wave, a little bit stronger. Best built with Scald. And best built, last but not least, with Ice Beam. And I think Ice Beam is really, really important so you can actually deal with Latios. Latios is a little bit of a threat. We have weaknesses on Infernape, weaknesses on Garchomp. We don't want to deal with what Latios brings to the table. And I also think that, like, Tangrowth is another really, really solid option for walling Tentacruel. So I think Ice Beam is really, really good in that spot. And if you actually take a look at Tentacruel, there's not a ton of moves you could realistically use in that situation, maybe other than Giga Drain, that we'd want to put in this exact spot. I don't really think we need a Toxic Spikes. We're going to be building a lot more aggressive Tentacruel. So I really like this aggressive moveset with Rapid Spin to enable us as a little bit of a sweeper as we add our EVs moving on. For Clefable, let's see, how do we really want to build Clefable? Clefable gets access to Moonlight. I think that's a really, really solid option. We know we're going to be using Skarmory for Stealth Rocks, so we don't necessarily need to put Stealth Rocks here. We could put Thunder Wave here. I do think that we're going to want to maybe add something like Fire Blast, and I'm personally more of a fan of Fire Blast over Flamethrower, just because it means we need less investment. And most people would probably put Moonblast here, being able to hit Dark and Dragon types for super effective damage. I think I'm just going to go with the Ice Beam for now, and this is one thing I want to mention. We don't need to fill this last spot right now. It's not important. We can fill this spot out as we fill out the rest of our team, start filling in our items and things that we might think that we need this Clefable to use later on. Maybe, for example, like we might want to actually just put like Thunder Wave here or something like that. Thunder Wave could be super good. Calm Mind could be super good. We can talk about what we want to add on the Clefable later. So let's just move on to Skarmory. We'll come back to this guy. And I think it's generally a good idea to not always finish each Pokemon and just move on to the next Pokemon so you can actually see what you want to do with the rest of your team later on. So Skarmory here, we know we want to add that Sturdy here. We know Skarmory's probably going to be using things like Stealth Rock. This is our main rock setter. Not Steel Wing will mount. Steel Wing's okay. I want to talk about this. Like, a lot of people use Steel Wing on their Skarmory. I'm not a big fan. Personally, I like Drill Peck more often. And that's just because Drill Peck is a lot better versus things like Breloom and Tangrowth, which are, again, super, super popular. It's super effective against those Pokemon, and it has 100% accuracy, and it has a higher base damage. So it's just going to be a lot better than things like Steel Wing. You don't actually need a Steel-type attack on your Skarmory. Most people tend to go with Stealth Rock. Then they go with, like, Whirlwind. And Whirlwind is, again, better than Roar, just because Whirlwind's not affected by things like Soundproof. And then the last move is going to be something like Roost. So this is a standard Skarmory set, and the reason you want to use Drill Peck over something like Brave Bird is because Brave Bird costs your HP stat, even though it's stronger, and that breaks your Sturdy. So you don't want to break your Sturdy. You want to make your opponent have to clock your Sturdy, and so you can go for like more Stealth Rocks, more Whirlwinds, more Roost, and just more moves in general. So I do think that this is a very, very standard Skarmory set. I've used it a ton, and I really do think it's good moving forward. And then last but not least, we have our Infernape set. There's a few different things Infernape can do. You can use Blaze or Iron Fist. I do think the Infernape set that we're going to want to go with here is, I know we're going to use U-Turn, right? I want a U-Turn Pokemon in the format in case I do need to turn away from things. I know we're going to want Close Combat here. And I'm planning on sashing this Infernape preferably, so I think that Fire Punch is a good set to use. This is pretty good, and because we're using Fire Punch here, I think it might not be a terrible idea to go with like Iron Fist over the Blaze. Just my personal opinion, because we always have the additional boost of the Iron Fist giving a 1.2 boost to our Fire Punch damage, so it's going to be pretty good moving forward. I also think this last move might just be a second Stealth Rock setter, just in case we need a second setter in general. So I think it's a pretty decent Infernape set. And again, we totally haven't figured out this Clefable set, and that's totally fine. So let's talk about this Garchomp set. What do we realistically want to do with this Garchomp? I do think that Leftovers Garchomp is very, very nice. I like being able to restore health after I substitute. But I do think that when calcing your Pokemon, you know, a lot of people, they just go on a Pokemon Showdown, they click this button here, and they think, cool, I'm good. 252, 252, with a plus speed nature, I'm good to go. I'm going to say that you do not need to always 252, 252 it. You got to think about how much like damage you need to deal, how much damage you need to take, and you need to think about if you really do need that 252 to actually function correctly. And the answer is no. More often than not, you don't actually need the 252 unless the Pokemon is super, super popular. So for example, Garchomp is super popular. We are going to keep this plus 252 with speed nature because it's super, super important. But what we're going to do is we are going to change this attack stack because we don't need that much attack. We actually can Swords Dance to get a lot more attack than actually what a 252 gives us. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back for a sec, and we're going to type in Garchomp here. And we're going to show you guys a bunch of other Garchomps that I have here. Let's take a look at this Garchomp set right here. Right here. And we're going to plug it into this team. And then we're going to talk about it a little bit. So this Garchomp set only has 176 in attack with 76 in specialty and 4 in HP. So it's going to be a little bit different. We are going to set this to level 100 and move it around just a little bit. Because remember, EVs are different at level 100 and level 50. So what does this set bring to the table compared to a 252 speed, 252 attack set? What this set brings to the table, putting a ton of points in specialty, is we do not die to a Blissey or any Pokemon that has a base 75 Ice Beam. So let's plug this into the damage calculator, right? So let's just go for a Garchomp here. Let's plug in a Garchomp, just a standard Garchomp here. And remember to make sure these are level 100. And let's plug in a Blissey. So let's plug in the Blissey. Let's give the Blissey 252 in special attack with like an Ice Beam here. And let's go back to our Garchomp here. You can see the Ice Beam super one-shots against our Garchomp. So let's put 76 points in here. You see, if we put 76 points in here, there's no way that Blissey actually KOs us after putting like an extra 4 in HP. There's no way this Blissey KOs us. And we actually are in a situation with, even if they have rocks up, we have a very, very high chance of living it because rocks do like reduce damage against Garchomp. So even if they have rocks up, we're still in a really, really solid spot with this exact set. And then again, as well, let's take a look at it. We have 176 points in here, 176 points in attack. Let's give ourselves an adamant nature. Sorry, a jolly nature. So it's neutral. Right there. Let's plug in like an earthquake. So you can see right there, we only need this much damage to actually OHKO that Blissey. We don't need investment to OHKO a regular Blissey. Now, obviously, a Blissey is going to be built like this. But just remember that calc does exist for Blisseys that want to be built incorrectly. We take advantage of Blisseys that are built incorrectly here. Most Blisseys, though, are going to be built like this. You can see we do about 50%. So we can do a +2 calc here. And you can see, well, it's like, well, that's not enough to actually KO the Blissey at +2. Remember, there's going to be Stealth Rocks active most of the time, so Blissey's going to take 12.5% on switching. So actually, Blissey's only going to have about 87.5% health, which means we actually have about a 98% chance of KOing the Blissey after Stealth Rocks damage after a +2. And even if we don't KO the Blissey, right? Even if we don't KO it, it can't one-shot us with Ice Beam, especially if we have leftovers or covering our health. So we're in a really, really good spot with this exact Garchomp set. It's able to bend the rules of how people actually look at Garchomp. It still functions at the same speed tier, but it's a ton bulkier. It still hits about as hard as most Garchomps would do. And we just have like everything that we possibly need. We have Earthquake Dragon Claw for coverage, we have the correct speed, and we have the bulk to actually eat Ice Beams from Pokemon that might just be teching Ice Beam to deal with us. So it's super, super good. And so I really, really do recommend this Garchomp set for most people using Garchomp in BDSP-OU. As for Blissey, I really do think most people, again, would click this button. They'd go like this. Full HP, full defense. Now, I will say, I've talked about this a lot in my Patreon topics. It's never, ever worth it to put HP points in Blissey. You can see it has 714 health at level 100. And if you take all 252 of those out, you have 651. That's just not really worth the investment. Case in point, let's take a look at our defense here. Our defense goes from 130 with full investment to 56. We get like almost a +3 multiplier onto our defense by going into these points. And this defense stat is going to be so much more worth it than putting points into HP. We're going to get such massive diminishing returns on HP. Basically, every single point that we're putting in defense, every 4 points that we're putting in defense is doing the work of roughly 30 to 40 points worth of like EVs into HP. So it's so much more worth it to put points into defense first before you put points into anything else. And I really do think that your special attack on this type of set that has Flamethrower, Ice Beam, and Thunder with such big special coverage is going to be so much more important to, again, put special attack investment into, with the last 4 points being here. And the only reason we're putting the last 4 points in here is because my Blissey set is pretty popular. A lot of people use it because, you know, I've made videos that have gotten literally hundreds of thousands of views with this exact Blissey set. So you want to be able to outspeed other Blisseys just by a little bit, because a lot of people, if they click this button, they're not putting those last 4 points here. They're not putting their last 4 points in anywhere else. They're putting those last 4 points in either something like Special D or literally any other stat, maybe even HP. So a lot of people aren't putting those last 4 points here. If you want to speed creep my set a little bit, you could even go like putting 8 points in here or putting 12 points in here. But again, those last 4 points in here are going to be very, very important with the leftovers as our item. And again, this set lets us hit super, super hard. We don't actually sacrifice a lot of bulk, even though we're not putting any investment in HP. That HP stat is so bloated that it completely carries Blissey. All you're really doing to make yourself a perfect mixed wall, both physical and special wall, is putting points in defense. We have more than enough special D. Like I talked about it. Clefable and Tentacle have a huge base specialty stat, 90 and 120. Blissey has more than them, and Blissey has 3 times the HP Tentacle has. So you don't really even need to put any points in HP to fully maximize this Pokemon. Putting points in offense and defense is going to make this Pokemon a perfect mixed wall and a great addition to almost any team. Now, as for Tentacle, I'm going to need to go back into my team builder and show you guys the perfect Tentacle set. So the perfect Tentacle set is going to be something like this. I built this for one of my Patreons the other day. And this is going to be the exact Tentacle set that I'm using in my tournament team, because I think it's super, super good. So let's take a look at this. So we have the Black Sludge, which is a little bit better than the leftovers. It's the same heal percentage, but again, if you switch in on your opponent using Trick or an ability that like takes their item, like Thief, you can just give them the Black Sludge, which will actually make them take 1/8 of their health. Which is kind of funny. You don't really see that often, but it is better than the leftovers. And again, with this Tentacle, we want to be a little bit defensive. We want to be heavy HP and special defense. This much speed here is going to let us outspeed base 115s. So what are some 1 base 15 speed Pokemon? Or what does that actually get us outspeeding? So that lets us outspeed Gengar, which is a base 110. That lets us outspeed Latios, which is a base 110. That lets us outspeed Raichu, which is a base 110. Everything that's a base 100, so things like Zapdos, Salamence, Staraptor, Charizard, those are all base 100s. And then from there, 115s that we're outspeeding are things like Azelf, which is a super, super popular Pokemon that's very, very frail. If they switch in, take rocks damage, a Scald might actually KO them if they take in a couple hits. And we're actually still super bulky because we're using a plus special defense nature. Guys, remember your nature is going to give a 10% boost to whatever stat you're looking at here. And so we want to give our 10% boost to our highest stat, which is going to obviously be our special defense over here, right here. You can see it right there. So since our special defense is obviously our highest stat, we're going to give a 10% boost to that stat. And again, this exact special attack stat, this is actually made to 2-hit KO Clefable with Sludge Wave. So if they switch in, we Sludge Wave, they take about 60%, and then they recover about 8% with leftovers, and then we do 60% again. So this is made to 2-hit KO Clefable, because Clefable is a really, really hard Pokemon for this team to deal with. Clefable is great versus our Clefable. Clefable is going to be great versus our Blissey. Clefable is okay versus Garchomp. And we want to be able to 2-shot their Clefable on the switch in. And again, just having more special attack makes us better versus things like Scizor, better versus things like Latios, better versus things like Azelf. So this is a very, very good Tentacle set that outspeeds threats at +1, soaks a ton of damage with our huge base specialty stat, and deals a ton of damage with moves like Ice Beam, Sludge Wave, and Scald with this 144 special attack investment boost. And again, this totally works at level 50 and level 100. It's relatively the same calc. Calcs are a little bit different, like I said, at level 1500, but this is actually relatively the same at both of them. So let's take a look at the next Pokemon. It's going to be Clefable. We know we wanted Moonlight. We know we wanted Fire Blast. We know we wanted Ice Beam. I'm actually going to take a look at another Clefable that I've made for another team. I feel like I'm pulling Pokemon that I've made for other teams. But in general, like, I really do feel like I work really hard on making these exact sets. So we take a look at this Clefable set. It's a Moonlight, Calm Mind, Fire Blast, Ice Beam set, which is roughly the exact way that I wanted to play Clefable on this exact team, because it has 3 of the 4 moves with addition of Calm Mind. And so this exact Clefable set with addition of the leftovers makes it so Garchomps cannot 2-hit KO Clefable. So I can switch in on a Garchomp Earthquake, I can soak a second Earthquake, and then I can Moonlight and then PP out a lot of those Earthquakes. And Earthquake does about 40%, which means if I use enough Moonlights, I'll eventually get to a situation where I have a free Moonlight, because we're restoring about 8% more than each Earthquake does. And then if I do that, I can weave in a free Ice Beam, which means I can just check the Garchomp here. So we're going to use this exact Clefable set. Note that it's made exactly for level 100. And again, Garchomps can be a little bit problematic. Not just Garchomps, things that use big physical attacks in general. So not only does this check Garchomp using Earthquake, it checks anything at a 130 base attack with full investment using a 100 base power stabbed move. So not only does it check Garchomp, it checks literally almost anything in the format. This set also lives a 3-hit KO Bullet Punch from Scizor, so I can switch in on a Bullet Punch from Scizor, and remember, it doesn't matter how many boosts they have from Swords Dance, we have the Unaware ability. I can soak a second Bullet Punch after my Leftovers tick, and then fire back a neutral Fire Blast, just to be able to go 4 times super effective and KO them. So the reason why I like this set a lot, has a ton of HP, ton of defense investment, because defense is what we're trying to focus on here. It has enough special D to throw off a Calx from opponent, and then it only has 20 points in speed, because we really want to be able to make sure we can outspeed other Clefables in these exact same situations. And I really do like this. Sometimes you put 4 in HP to outspeed other, mirror matches with other base 60 speed bonds. Sometimes you put 8, sometimes you put 12, sometimes you put 16. We're going 20 because we always want to outspeed other Clefables. It's super important, and I would highly recommend it for this set. So very, very good set. We also can just, if we ever weave in one Calm Mind, this Clefable becomes an absolute beast, dealing a ton of damage, not taking that much damage on the specialty side, and just being a general bully like mid to late game. So very, very defensively oriented Pokemon. And so the next Pokemon is going to be Skarmory. I really do think Leftovers are going to be the best item here. And let's build this set how I actually think it should be played. So I think with Skarmory, the first thing you want to do when you're looking at EVs, you want to make sure you have enough speed. And so again, 4 points in speed is enough to outspeed Skarmory, so you don't have any points. 8 points in speed is enough points to outspeed Skarmories that have 4 points. That's the wrong button. 12 points in speed is enough to outspeed Pokemon that have 8. And you're starting to see a pattern. 16 points is enough points to outspeed Pokemon that have 12. I'm a big fan of putting at least 20 if you know you want to go first in those situations. So why would you want to go first in a Skarmory mirror match? The reason being is you want to use Roost and Roar before they can use Roost and Roar. So if you ever get into a situation where you and your opponent both have Rocks up and you want to use Whirlwind or Roar before they do, to be able to make them switch out their Pokemon, take more damage from Stealth Rocks, and just generally be in a disadvantageous situation if a bad Pokemon comes in, it's a really good idea to make sure you do that first, because even though Whirlwind's a -6 priority, if you're both using Whirlwind, the Pokemon with the higher base speed uses it first. Same thing works against like Trick Room and stuff like that. So you want to make sure that you have a higher base speed than the other Pokemon that commonly use those moves. Other Pokemon that commonly use those moves, things like Torterra, things like obviously Incineroar, and things like Sword and Shield. There's a bunch of base 60s that use those, so having 20 points here, similar to the Clefable, is going to give us a slight advantage in those situations and let us use a Whirlwind and even Roost to be able to restore health in those situations where we might be pretty low. Again, Skarmory also has a base 70. This is all 20 points to make sure we're outspeeding other Skarmories, but we're also speed creeping like heavily other Pokemon that have like base 60s and base 65 base speeds. Again, I also do think that like 252 is going to be a lot more important to invest to than things like HP first. Things like defense first. And then the last little bit of points we're going to put into defense. You see we have 236 here. Just throw those in defense. It's completely fine. We can rely on things like Blissey and Clefable and Tentacle to switch in if we're really, really afraid of a special attack. Let's think about what special attacks we're weak against here. Fire attacks, right? We're really afraid of fire attacks. That's why we have a Tentacle and a Garchomp, being able to switch in, and an Infernape to be able to switch in on those fire attacks. Let's think about electric attacks. We have a Blissey, which has an absolute massive specialty, a Clefable, which is trained to eat special attacks, and a Garchomp, which is a ground type to deal with soaking special attacks from the electric type. So it's super, super nice to see a set like this. And again, we just want to put a minus special attack nature, and we don't really need to do anything else. This is a very, very good Skarmory set. It's going to outspeed the things we need to outspeed. It's going to be able to soak the damage on the physical side that this team definitely needs. And it's going to be able to set up rocks, go for whirlwinds, go for roosts, elongate the game, do a ton of chip damage through the use of Stealth Rocks, dealing 12.5% every single time your opponent switches in a Pokemon, factoring in Rock's weakness. And it's a very, very solid Pokemon that you can use to, get yourself out of a bad position. So obviously if your Pokemon starts popping off with a Dragonette's Pokemon, you can send the Skarmory out. If they don't have rocks up and you still have your Sturdy up, you can always soak all the damage, go to 1% because Sturdy's going to make it so you don't die. You're always live at least 1 if you're at full. And then you can just roll them out. So if you're if you need to get a jail free card, you can always use the Skarmory for that. So it's going to be a very, very good Pokemon to stop your opponent from sweeping you in those situations where they get a little bit out of control. And as for Infernape, again, I talked about how I wanted to sash this thing because we don't have a Sashmon. I think every single team should have a Sashmon. You should also be doubling up on the things you need to get accomplished. I do think this team needs Stealth Rocks to work correctly. If we want to sweep with Garchomp, if we want to sweep with Clefable, if we want to sweep with Infernape, or maybe even sweep with Tentacruel, we do need to break sashes, and the way to break sashes is through using Stealth Rocks. So we want 2 Stealth Rock setters if we need it. Note this team does not have a Defog user. We only have 1 Rabbit Spin user. So Infernape's going to be a really good secondary Stealth Rock setter. And because Infernape is so popular, it's going to be a Pokemon in the top 10 OU tier. I do think you actually are just completely fine clicking this button and generally just using a full speed attack Infernape, because we want to be able to function at that 108 base speed so we can always at least speed tie other Infernapes for those late game situations where we have to close combat other Infernapes. And other than that, I do think this is a very, very good Pokemon. I think you could cut a little bit of attack a little bit of speed if you wanted to, and go down to barely outspeeding a Garchomp. But in general, I really just want to be able to speed tie other Infernapes. So I'm going to keep with this exact Infernape spread for this first round of the tournament. And in general, this is just my tournament team. We'll click validate here, see if it actually works. And remember, there is no item clause in Smogon. See, it says it's valid. BDSPOU, we are valid right now. It's very, very solid team. And we have really, really good speed tiering on a lot of these guys. The Garchomp outspeeds other Garchomps, preferably. The Blissey outspeeds the Blisseys. Tentacruel outspeeds other base Pokemon with base 100, and outspeeds base 115s at +1. Clefable outspeeds other base 60s. Skarmory base outspeeds other base 70s. Infernape at the very least speed ties other Infernape. So I do think this is a very, very good team. What we're going to do now is we're going to go into a couple games. I'm going to show you guys how I personally play the team versus just a couple random OU teams. And other than that, wish me luck. These are my very first games for the team, so we're going to go right into them. Here we go. All right, so the first thing we're going to want to do is type a little bit of GLHF. Always tell your opponent GLHF. The second thing you want to do is think about typing like Game 1, Game 2, Game 3 if you're playing this in a tournament setting, because that's just a good way of making sure you're actually keeping track of each game that we play. Another thing to note is like each one of those teams, this team for example, has all of the Pokemon we teched to build against. It has a Latios, it has the Gliscor, it has the Scizor, it has the Clefable, and again, like a sweeper with things like a Feraligatr, a different like wall with things like a Fable, and something like a Crawdaunt. So let's see, how do I want to deal with this? What's a really, really safe option we can lead with? I want our opponents to get into the idea of us leading Garchomp. So I think they might lead with something that checks Garchomp. So that might be something like Clefable. So that might mean, oh, they just scoop. That's fine. That's fine. We take those. This person does not want to wait the time to play the game, but I want to talk about this. Like, what would you lead in this situation? I think that we would have been in a really good situation leading with Skarmory. If we lead with Skarmory, let's talk about every situation where Skarmory works. If we lead Skarmory or Scizor, we set rocks, they go Swords Dance, they U-turn, we Whirlwind. They attack, we Whirlwind. So that's a net win. If they lead with Feraligatr, we go Stealth Rocks, they go Dragon Dance or Waterfall, we soak enough damage, and then just Whirlwind next turn. That's a win. If they lead with Gliscor, cool. We don't really care about Gliscor. We Stealth Rocks, which forces them to defog, which means when they'll defog next turn, we switch to Blissey or Clefable, and we Ice Beam them on the turn that they defog, or after they defog, so we get a free switch into those mons, and we're fine. If they lead with Clefable, we still set our rocks, we soak damage from a Fire Blast, or we switch to something like our Tentacruel, which is totally fine. And again, that's totally fine. If they lead with Crawdaunt, I don't mind setting rocks and then hard switching to do Tentacruel in that situation. And if they lead with Latios, I do not mind setting Stealth Rocks. So this is a team that's very, very much made to beat that type of team. Obviously, this guy did not have the patience, but just because the fact they're using a ton of meta OU picks means they would have been the perfect Pokemon for me to dumpster, which is probably why they scooped in the first place. So we'll actually take those, and we're going to go into another game and see if we can actually get some people that want to play the game. Okay, this guy's team's super weird. But again, I'm prepared for super weird. I know all the speech with these Pokemon, and I can use Pokemon Showdown to tell me. So like something like a Pinsir is going to be a base 95, or sorry, it's not even 95. It's like an 80-ish. I don't even know. It's under base 100, right? Charizard's base 100. Kangaskhan's a base 90, I know that. Tauros a base 110. Infernape's a base 95. Yeah, this is a 95. This is an 80. And then Golem's just super slow. So one thing we want to think about is what are the bad things about setting with hazards first? Now, the only bad things would be like Charizard abusing our Skarmory. And I think that's totally fine because we'll switch right into our special wall or even our Tentacle. So I think there's nothing wrong with leading Skarmory here. So let's go right into the Golem. I am totally fine trading rocks because I have a Rabbit Spin user and you do not have a Ghost type. So let's just go with rocks. Rocks up. Rocks are going to be super, super good versus this team. There's a Pinsir, there is a Charizard, and there's a ton of Pokemon that are commonly sashed like Primeape and Tauros. So they're going to go right into Charizarding. Now, there's nothing wrong with this. They're coming in before the rocks damage. They're coming in to be able to pin our Steel type. And I don't think there's realistically a problem with just going right out to Blissey. And I think going to Blissey before Tentacle is going to be really good because we want to save Tentacle as much as possible. And their Swords Dance Charizard, little bit different. A little bit different. I think we have to bust out the Thunder here. And Fire Blitz, they're going to take just an absolute massive ton of recoil. We hit the Thunder. We do. Charizard goes down for the count. So while that took a ton of points on our Blissey, right? And that's a little bit greedy to play SD like physical Charizard. We're not in a terrible spot. I think that there's a slight chance they want to go for like a physical attacker with like a close combat. But there's also like a slight % chance of like EQ maybe. I think Primeape still gets like EQ, Rock Slide, Stone Edge, things like that. I'm going to go into the Tentacle here. I don't think that's terrible here. I don't think they're going to be Earthquaking me. Close combat's not going to do... Ooh, that's a lot. They're banded. So they're going to be banded close combat. Let's think about that. I wonder if they're scarfed. So they did a 56%. Could they do 56% again? Then they're gonna, that's definitely banded damage. That's me knowing how much damage something like that should do. If you take a look at Infernape. Sorry, not Infernape. Primeape's not that strong. It's just not that strong. I think it has like a base like 80 or 90 even attack. Do we need to use Tentacle for anything else? I don't think that we do. I'm just going to go for a Sludge Wave here. And we're going to lose the Tentacle, which is totally fine. We're going to be able to come in with the Garchomp, soak damage, and just go for a big EQ. Really good play by our opponent going for a banded Infernape. Sorry, I keep calling this an Infernape. It's basically just like a bad Infernape. We're just going to go for an Earthquake here. It does good damage against all of those. And it's just a smart play. Switching the Golem, that's why we used Earthquake over something like Dragon Claw. And I really do like what that Primeape brought to the table. I wouldn't be surprised if they wanted to bring it back out and use like Outrage or something. But we do not want to... Oh, Custap. Not bad. Not bad. Custap Golem, good tech. I should have been able to scout that by the fact that I didn't see leftovers. And it's just me going a little bit too fast here. So let's see. If it's Infernape, we're going to switch right out to Skarm. Because I think they're going for something like an Outrage. Tauros. I don't mind like Outrage from Tauros either. You can see Tauros actually outspeeds Garchomp. It's a base 110 versus a base 102. So I'm just going to go with the standard Earthquake here. They're going for a double switch on the Primeape slot. Yeah, we're gonna be able to take these. And if they ever hit us here, we're in an absolute amazing spot. Let's see what I want to do. I do not need Garchomp to win. Basically, I can fodder this Garchomp in this situation and then just send out my actual Infernape and just close combat away for most of these. So in this situation, I'm going to let them hit me with literally anything they feel like. I'm surprised I'm faster than them. Ooh, the choice band damage. Good stuff, because the Rough Skin takes him out. So I didn't actually care if they took me out here. I really didn't care. I was surprised that we KO'd. I was surprised we outsped, because Garchomp is a 102, Infernape's like a... Not Infernape. I thought it was Scarfed, but it's banded, I guess. My bad. My bad. Totally my bad. Actually, like, I talked about it being banned the whole time. Why did I think they'd outspeed me? Anyways, I was thinking, like, maybe it was like a Scarf Adamant set, and I couldn't tell, but it is what it is. Let's think about this. I think Infernape is the right play, though. Talk about the real Infernape here. And even if they have, like, Fake Out, we're just in an absolutely amazing spot here. Infernape checks all the rest of these mons. We have Close Combat versus their 2 normal types, and we have Fire Punch versus their Bug type. So it's going to be a win up, And I think they just scoop it up. Yeah, pretty easy game. I did misplay a little bit versus the Primeape because they caught me off guard. But I did respect the Primeape enough and put myself in a situation where I had enough tools to still win the game after that. So we're going to go into one more game because I feel like the first 2 games we played are pretty lame. And let's go into one more and see if we can actually get a solid win versus an absolute meta team. I'd say it's a pretty meta team. Like, Breloom's meta, Umbreon's pretty good, Aerodactyl's solid, Alakazam's super meta. So we're going to fight against this, and let's see how I want to deal with this. Arcanine's a little bit of a problem with Intimidate, but I do think that they're going to get their rocks up with Aerodactyl. Normally, I would like to lead Skarm, but Skarm can get definitely taunted by Aerodactyl and taken advantage of. So I don't really feel a need to go with that. I actually think there's nothing wrong with leading Clefable here, because this will force them to respect Stealth Rocks. And again, if they want to lead with something like Breloom or even Aerodactyl, we're just in a great spot versus those mons. The only thing I don't really want to fight is something like Melodic. So again, there's their Aerodactyl, which is exactly what we thought they were going to lead with. They kind of have to taunt, so I'm going to take advantage of this and go for Ice Beam. And if they want to Stealth Rocks, that's completely fine. We have Spinners. They don't have a Ghost type. So Stealth Rocks, nothing wrong with that. We're going to go for damage. And again, it's better to go for 2 Ice Beams than it is to go for 1 Calm Mind in this exact situation. I wouldn't be surprised to see an Arcanine / a Melodic switch. And then from there, we'll switch to our Blissey to mitigate damage on those situations. And then from there, we'll eventually try to weave in a situation where we can bring in our Tentacruel, Rapid Spin, which will enable us to use things like our Infernape and Garchomp a little bit later on. So that's the plan. You're always thinking 2 to 3 turns ahead, always thinking your defensive switch-ins, like we anticipate the Monarch switching in. We might get the freeze, probably not. All right, again, no issue, no problem. We don't get the freeze there. I don't think that's a big deal. I do think the Tentacruel could be a really good switch in here. So could Blissey. I'm going to try the Tentacruel here. We're going to try the Tentacle. We're just going to go for the Rapid Spin. So, like, Scald shouldn't do that much damage. It should just... It sucks to get the burn, but it's just going to mitigate our Black Sludge here. So, we're just going to go for the Rapid Spin straight away. And as long as we're ending the situation with, like, a +1... Sorry, not +1 speed. As long as we're ending this situation by removing their Stealth Rocks, we're actually in a good position because they took a lot of damage on their Aerodactyl. And we're not going to switch. They get a critical hit there, a little bit never lucky for us. But at this point, we're just going to go for Sludge Wave, which is actually going to do a pretty significant amount of damage. The Marble Scale on the Melodic boosts its defense, but doesn't boost its... yeah, you see that's a lot of damage. It's a critical hit. And we're just going to switch to... We could switch to Blissey. I think that it might be better to switch to the Skarm here. Skarm's just going to be a better defensive mon. Because Alakazam does get Psy Shock. I'm surprised their Melodic just soaked that much damage. We actually could almost outspeed their Alakazam. 363 versus 372. We do not outspeed base 120s. Otherwise, we would just stay in and Sludge Wave again. So Focus Blast, not going to... Ooh! Is that Spexed? It's a good play from them. I'll force them to do that again. I'll Stealth Rocks. I'll force them to hit me with... They're not Spexed. Wow. They just do that much damage twice. That's actually just absolutely amazing. That's fine. A good play from our opponents. I like that. We're just going to stay in and go for an Ice Beam here. I think there might be a slight chance that Breloom switches in. You want to be able to get the freeze if you can. Good play from our opponent. They go in for the Focus Blast. They missed this one. We do be taking those. So Alakazam goes down. This will force the Breloom to come out. And then we're going to have to pick a Pokemon to go to sleep if they want to put something to sleep. We could force them to put whatever we switch to sleep. Oh, Arcanine. So that means it might have close combat. I'll just go right back into Tentacruel. Tentacruel does outspeed the Arcanine again. So we'll see what they want to play here. I don't think there's a problem with the Tentacruel. We could also even go into Garchomp here. There's nothing wrong with Garchomp, actually. Let's go into Garchomp instead. A little bit safer. Ooh, the reads! The reads! Play rough into the Blissey slot. What an absolutely amazing player from such a good player. Let's go for the EQ here. And they're Scarfed! They're Scarfed Arcanine! Okay. Scarfganine. Okay. That's alright. Let's go for a Scald. We shouldn't even go for the Scald. They're going to switch. Let's go for a Sludge Wave. Hey, good play. I have no problem seeing the Scarf Arcanine. Now remember, most tournaments are going to be best of 3. So that stuff, see the Scarf and the Specs and all those items, they don't really fly. I actually think that Alakazam is going to be Modest Nature. I mean, we already took it out, but like, it doesn't really matter in the future. Sucks we don't get the Poison now. That really does suck. I'd like to get a Poison or Burn. I'm going to go for Sludge Wave. I'm going to go for a Sludge Wave till we get the Poison, basically. Wow, it's a 30% chance Poison. Yeah, I'm not switching. I'm not getting Yawned. I'd love a Poison if you could just give me a Poison. It's a 30% chance. Oh, sorry, it's only 10. Let's just go for Scald then. Sludge Bomb's the one that's a 30% chance. Yeah, I would just love to get my burn. It's going to make your foul plays do more damage so I can switch into my other Pokemon in the future. I do think if I switch into this Clefable... Oh, you're gone. You're done, Zoe. You're done, Zoe. Wasted, and you wasted your wish. We do be taking those. This is a perfect example of a situation where my opponent didn't really know how to take advantage. And we just chilled. Like, we aren't forced to take any advantage. Like, we don't have to do anything else. We were in a decent position where we weren't losing. And so we just stayed in, and we were very stubborn. And our opponent floundered and messed up a little bit. So let's see. What do we need to do in this exact situation? If we can take out that Arcanine and take out the Breloom, they can't beat our Blissey. So hopefully they run out something like that here. They don't really have that many monsters that can deal with Tentacruel proactively, I don't think. I think Tentacruel is just a really, really solid mon. Yeah, I'll stay in here. Arcanine does not have a electric attack in this gen. So even if they go for like a close combat or like a big fire attack like a Fire Blitz, it shouldn't KO us. And we should be able to get a KO with Scald. And that's one physical mon down. And then we probably can outspeed that Breloom. Yeah, E-Speed's a great move here. But, oof, almost taking it out. Let's see. E-Speed did 36%. We're at 29. I don't want to deal with that. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to Clefable. And then they'll Flare Blitz. And I'll switch back to my... I guess I could just Moonlight. That's fine. I'll Moonlight. Actually, we already saw they're Scarfed. So I guess I'll just Calm Mind. Yeah, that's a good play. So they're Scarfed. We know they're Scarfed. Scarfed E-Speed is very uncommon. And I don't care if they do anything weird to our Clefable here. It does not matter. It does not matter at all. That Melodic shouldn't be able to do anything weird to our Clefable here. Like, we can actually just Calm Mind over it. Because Melodic... Oh, it has Haze. Okay, cool. That's fine. So they're probably going to recover relatively soon. And on their recover, they already are burned. We'll switch here. They're going to Haze again soon. Haze again. Wow. So they're just taking burn damage. That's fine. Melodic's a big problem Pokemon. And we can't paralyze it because it's burned with with Marvel Skill. But how are we going to deal with this? This is going to do a lot. Please don't burn. Wow, you've burned me twice on 2 Scalds. But... we clap those Thunders. We clap those Thunders. We do be taking those. So they're going to have to recover soon. Our Thunder does 36% chance, which means if we crit a Thunder here... oh, they're going to switch, which means they don't have Recover. We take those. That misses bad. Let's see. We have a burned Tentacruel. I don't mind staying in here. Their Melodic's too low to actually function. So we're just going to stand. It's better to freeze than to burn. Yep, we take these. We punish you, bro. We punish you for trying to SD in my face. You can't Spore me. You had to hit me. You had to hit me. We take those. We had to take those. And now you're Melodic. Like, if you had Recovery, you should have used it. Your Umbreon can't beat a Blissey. Your Arcanine can't realistically do it here. I don't really care what you do in this exact situation. I'm just going to go for an Ice Beam. That's fine. I really don't care. Like... that's completely fine. We take those. You can't break Clefable with these either. Right? That's another thing. You can't break Clefable with these two either. Like, Clefable can eventually just PP out the Melodic. And in this exact situation, I'll try and go for the soft build. It shouldn't work. 147 versus... oh, they didn't get the KO because we're burned. Remember, Foul Play does less damage if your opponents are burned because it uses their attack in conjunction to it. So we'll get 2 free soft builds. They threw the game. The game is now over. We have won with Blissey. Can't be using Foul Play in that situation, bro. Can't be using Foul Play. In this exact situation, it's better to go for a Thunder, because if, like, for some reason they don't recover, they'll take out from Burn, and if they do use Recover, yeah, they just scoop it up. They just do be scooping it up. We do be taking those. And, yeah, pretty solid game. Obviously, the Scarf Arcanine gave us a ton of issues, but obviously we have the right defensive core to switch to the threats and pin our opponents and get into a situation where we were super safe, forcing them to basically pick their poison on how they wanted to get KO'd. We forced them to go for a Swords Dance with our Breloom, or at least try and KO our Blissey. Even if they did that, we'd be able to repin those Pokemon with something like Infernape. Note that we didn't even need to use our Infernape, which we totally could have used the whole game. So hopefully you like this little video. Hopefully you like this little, in-depth look onto how I like to build tournament teams. I will say that I do a ton of prep work before these videos. So if you guys want to see that prep work, think about checking out the Patreon. There's a ton of links to the Patreon in the description where I show all my little steps that I do to actually pick the 6 Pokemon and get my EV sets made before I make these videos. But other than that, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Peace out, and I'll see you guys next time.